Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, I got to thinking about something today as I was on the exercise bike at the gym, and it was prompted by something that I saw in a G Plus thread. And I may talk about this G Plus thread in a subsequent video, but what I'm going to talk about has really nothing to do with that thread, mostly. But I got to thinking about an experience that I've had learning new role-playing games and an impediment to learning role-playing games, or something, some mental conflict I've had with myself, or internal conflict I've had with myself, as I've checked out different role-playing games and other things in life, to be honest with you. But let's talk about my favorite subject, at least for this channel, which would be RPGs, and that is, I guess you'd call it my learning style, or maybe my history with learning. And what I mean by that is this: I'm a smart person, but I'm not a genius, and at a young age, I was rather precocious, and I was able to learn things relatively rapidly. Most things came to me pretty naturally, for the most part, except sports. I sucked at sports. But, I was able to learn quite a few things that, I always felt like in school, like, nothing was very challenging or what have you. And I got used to just understanding things right away. And at some point, somewhere in junior high school or high school, I hit that first brick wall where I found out that there were things I would actually have to put some effort into. Not being used to having to put some effort into things, and not being accustomed to not understanding something right away, I didn't do so well with that, and so I tended to rebel against that. And as a result, it's one of the reasons I did not apply myself as much as I should have. And it's since then, learning has been somewhat of I don't want to call it a lifelong struggle, but I noticed that inclination in myself when I'm presented with something which is difficult to learn, which leads me to role-playing games. I'm not sure, it's kind of lost in the mists of time a little bit, how quickly I picked up Dungeons and Dragons, when I first got it. But as far as my recollection goes, it was pretty fast. It wasn't something that was really difficult for me to learn. And once I had the foundation of learning, Moldvay basic D&D, something like advanced D&D, while there were some bizarre, weird parts about it, the basic framework of how does this game really work was relatively easy. And then it was just a matter of learning all the little nuances and what have you, or, perusing the spell lists. And that was a time of great discovery and wonder. Now, you get to today, where I'm looking at various other role-playing game systems. And there are times when I find myself having an internal conflict, or fighting, myself, so to speak. When I notice that there are many games or parts of games which I grasp right away, and then there's other parts where I don't quite understand it at first glance. I have to read it and reread it. And there are those times when I am ready to throw the whole thing out. And sometimes, I have to examine and see, okay, well, is this game simply, there's something wrong with this game? Is there something just ain't right here with the particular game system I'm looking at? Or is it that it's a little difficult for me? And, is the problem with the game, or is the problem that I'm becoming frustrated because it's not coming fast enough? That I'm not understanding it, that perhaps there's something really good on the other side, but I need to understand, like, how this mechanic works, or how this particular procedure is going to work. Am I? I've talked about this before, but what's the return on my investment going to be? But sometimes it's a little bit deeper than that. It's that I don't want to make that investment, or don't want to put that effort into learning because it's a little bit uncomfortable. And there's not to go make this a psychology video, but there's a certain part of my psyche I've noticed where I will start to rebel against things when I don't quite understand them at first pass, and I start to declare them sour grapes. I'm not sure if any of you can relate to that, but I've noticed that coming up a few times for me as I've picked up different role-playing games that maybe handle things a little bit differently, or have some somewhat complex subsystems involved. And I have those moments where I'm intrigued and excited about the game, but I get to certain points and I'm like, I don't really know if I really want to learn all this. But I look back at the games that I've learned and have learned to love lately, and I think I've had a point with just about each one of those games where I had that moment of frustration, where I wasn't quite sure, is there something I'm not getting here, or is there something wrong, or am I simply just becoming frustrated because there's a bit of a learning curve? And I don't want to engage in that learning curve. Sometimes it's being petulant, But sometimes it's that childhood feeling of frustration when I finally encountered things that were going to be difficult for me, and it's the psychological impact that had. So you don't have to take out the violins and start crying for me, but it's something I've noticed in myself, and I wonder if other people have had the same thing happen to them, especially with something like this where maybe you've learned how to do this already, you already know how to role play, and then you're presented with a different game, a different system, and you get to that part in the game where you're like, I don't understand this, and I don't think this makes sense, and I already know how to do this stuff. If you understand where I'm coming from. So yeah, just want to throw that out there. See if anybody else has had the same type of experience, and maybe just kind of confess, my own shortcomings and limitations, and the things that I need to overcome in order to learn a new game. What about you?